Good evening, friends. Last night we did the text of chapter 1. Now we're doing the commentary on chapter 1 of the Peticha. Commentary by Rav Avraham Mordechai Gottlieb. 1. Rabbi Hananya ben Akasha says, quote, God wanted to purify Israel and therefore gave them a lot of Torah and mitzvot, spiritual learning and spiritual practice, end quote. We see here that the only purpose of Torah and mitzvot is to purify ourselves. This purification is acquired through Torah and the spiritual work of mitzvot. Very bold and powerful statement. The only purpose of Torah and mitzvot, the only purpose of this spiritual learning and the spiritual practice is to purify ourselves. We'll get to understand what we mean by purify ourselves in a bit, but this is the only purpose of Torah and mitzvot, to purify ourselves. This purification is acquired through Torah, the spiritual learning, and the spiritual practice, the spiritual work of mitzvot. This is like what the sages say, quote, the mitzvot were given to purify Israel. Tsaref, the Hebrew word in this verse, meaning purify, tsaref, has the same root as the word for goldsmith. It also means, quote unquote, to clean and quote unquote to combine. So the same word saref means to purify, means goldsmith, to clean and to combine. The craft of a goldsmith is to clean gold of its impurities. The goldsmith separates the waste and combines the clean parts of the gold. Our spiritual work is to remove our impure aspects and combine our good aspects. Our spiritual work is to remove our impure aspects and combine our good aspects. When all Israel throws away the impurity of individual self-concern, the separate self-consciousness that we talked about in the previous work, when all Israel throws away the impurity of individual self-concern, separate self-consciousness, which divides us, we will become unified as one entity. We'll become unified as one entity when we throw away the impurity of individual self-concern, concern for one's own self, consumed with separate self-consciousness. When gold comes from the earth, it is full of impurities and does not look precious. Through being refined over and over, the impurities slowly fall away until pure gold remains. Likewise, we need to refine ourselves time after time. There are ups and downs along the way. We need to understand this purification that we attain through Torah and mitzvot and understand what coarseness in ourselves we need to refine. The opposite of refinement is coarseness. The opposite of refinement is coarseness. The intention is not necessarily physical coarseness, but also spiritual coarseness, meaning a desire to receive spiritual pleasures. So physical coarseness is a desire to receive physical pleasures, and spiritual coarseness is a desire to receive spiritual pleasures. Both are coarseness and both need to be refined. People who care only about themselves are called unrefined and coarse, and this is true even of people who desire spirituality. So the question is, what is the coarseness within ourselves that we need to refine through the spiritual work, the spiritual learning of Torah, and the spiritual work of mitzvot? It is very important to delineate what we need to purify in ourselves. Although many holy books discuss overcoming our Yetzer Hara, which is understood as our evil or negative inclination, what this Yetzer Hara actually is, however, is very obscure. The Yetzer Hara is described as having many aspects: pride, craving, depression, jealousy, and so on. So this negative inclination, or the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara, has many aspects, including pride, craving, depression, jealousy, and so on. With all these different aspects, we don't even know where to begin. As the nature of divine light is to delineate everything simply and clearly as the light itself is simple, the Baal Sulam is about to delineate in the clearest possible terms what disconnects us from God. What do we need to work on? To repeat briefly, the purpose of creation is to give pleasure to the created beings. Purpose of creation, purpose of this creation, of all of creation, is to give pleasure to the created beings. This gift being in accordance with the Creator's supernal generosity. The commentary. Does the Creator's desire to give goodness to creation connote lack? Right? If there's a desire to give goodness, it means that the Creator is lacking what is lacking this giving goodness, because there's a desire to give goodness. Does the Creator lack giving goodness to creation? Does the Creator lack giving goodness to creation? The answer is no. We are not able to understand this because all our desires are an expression of lack. In divine reality, however, the desire to give goodness does not come from lack. So, it's a spiritual concept that the divine and the divine reality, the desire of God to give goodness, does not come from a lack. A great desire to receive this Shefa, the abundant goodness, the light and love of God, was therefore imprinted in the souls. This great desire to receive the Shefa was imprinted in the souls because the desire to receive is the vessel for experiencing the pleasure in the Shefa, the light and love of God. The desire to receive is the vessel. It receives, it is the vessel to experience the pleasure of God's love. The degree of desire to receive the Shefa determines the degree of the pleasure experience from the Shefa, no more, no less. Commentary. God's desire to give goodness necessitated the creation in our souls of a desire to receive the goodness. So God's desire to give the goodness necessitated the creation in our souls of a desire to receive the goodness. This is because feeling goodness depends on a desire to receive the goodness. This is like, for example, two people eating the same meal, but one of them enjoys it much more than the other. The difference is in their appetite. The difference is their appetite. The person with a big appetite enjoys the meal a lot. The person without an appetite, even if given a feast, is not able to enjoy the meal. The desire to receive is the vessel that feels pleasure from what is given. The size of the desire to receive determines the amount of pleasure felt from the Shefa. We'll do a little more and then we'll stop for the evening. There are So they are so intimately connected one to the other that we do not differentiate between them except in terms of their relationship. The pleasure is associated with the shefa, and the desire to receive the shefa is associated with the created being who receives the shefa. Here we are talking about the thought of creation, meaning the thought of the creator to create reality. And this quote-unquote thought of God, the desire to receive the shefa are attached to one another. The desire to receive and the shefa, the light, are attached to one another. The creator is not like a person who needs tools to work. The thought of God itself is the action. The thought of God itself is the action. Therefore, in the thought of creation, there instantly appears the desire to receive, filled with the shefa and the divine pleasure that God desires to bestow. So in the thought of creation instantly appears both the desire to receive the light filled with the light and the divine pleasure that God desires to bestow. The desire to receive is the vessel of the created being, and the shefa is the light of the revelation of God. The shefa is the light of the revelation of God. The enjoyment results from the connection between the shefa and the desire to receive. The enjoyment results in the connection between the light and the desire to receive the light. Even though in God's thought of creation, the shefa fills the vessel with pleasure and nothing separates between them, there is a differentiation. So even though in God's thought of creation, the shefa fills the vessel with pleasure and nothing separates between them, there is a differentiation. The shefa, which corresponds to the pleasure, comes from God's essence. And the vessel, which is the desire to receive, does not exist in the essence of God and is the essence of the created being. So the shefa is direct light, revelation of God. It comes from God's essence. But the vessel, which is the desire to receive, does not exist in God's essence. It is the creation. It is the essence of the created being, the essence of creation. These both emanate from the Creator and are rooted in the Creator's thought of creation. These both, quote unquote, these both refers to the shefa and the desire to receive. The shefa comes from the essence of the Creator, quote unquote, something from something, from that which is. The essence of the shefa emanates from the essence of God. We have no comprehension of the essence of God, but can comprehend only the light that emanates from the essence. Only what God wants us to comprehend. Only what God wants us to comprehend. The light that emanates from the essence. Since we have a spiritual axiom that, quote, we have no comprehension of the essence of God, unquote, we need to say that what God wants the created beings to comprehend is not the essence of God, but rather an aspect of God associated with the created beings. We're not here to comprehend or experience the essence of God. Rather, we're only here to comprehend the aspect of God that's associated with us, with the created beings, the light which is the revelation of God's unity and God's existence. We find that the concept of, quote, the Creator's thought of creation, end quote, is already a concept of relationship between the Creator and the created beings. We find that the concept of the Creator's thought of creation is already the concept of relationship between the Creator and the created beings. This is the most primal state that contains the root of all the created beings. And the thought of creation is the most primal state that contains the root of all the created beings. It is no wonder that there is a desire to receive here, because the desire to receive is included in the thought of creation. This thought is not the essence of God, but rather something especially created for the created beings, as we said above. The thought of creation is for the created beings. It's the whole purpose of creation. It's all connected. The thought of creation is the essence. It's directly linked with the created beings in creation. In the language of the Kabbalah, the Creator's thought of creation is called Ein Sof. Okay, so we call the thought of creation, the Creator's thought of creation, we call it Ein Sof, meaning unlimited or without end. At this point, the desire to receive does not cause any disconnection from the Creator. This is important. At this point, the desire to receive, in the thought of creation, the desire to receive does not cause any disconnection from the Creator. The divine light is clothed 100% in the vessel of receiving. In that thought of creation, the initial thought of creation, both the vessel and the light are together. The vessel is there. It is full of the light. And there's no disconnection from the Creator. The divine light is clothed 100% in the vessel of receiving. But after this primal state of Ein Sof, the thought of creation, a disconnection and separation called Tzimtzum, remember this word, Tzimtzum, contraction, will occur, that we will learn about later. I'm going to read to the end of this page. While the desire to receive is something from nothing, meaning something newly created, and is the root of the created beings. Something from nothing means something created new, something newly created, not existing in God's essence. And this is the root of the created beings. This is because the essence of God, in the essence of God, there is, of course, no aspect whatsoever of the desire to receive. In the essence of God, there's no aspect of the desire to receive. Even though the desire to receive emanates from God, it is described as something, quote, something newly created, end quote. Something newly created, because God has no desire to receive. This is wondrous because in physical reality, we're not able to give what we don't have. God, however, created something that did not exist in God. In divine reality, there is no desire to receive at all. Desire to receive means lack, and God is complete to the end point of perfection and contains no lack. Desire, longing, and lack are not applicable to God at all. Last phrase. We can therefore say that the desire to receive that we are speaking about is the entire material of creation from beginning to end. Desire to receive is the entire material of creation from beginning to end. There are only two aspects, the Creator and the creation. The Creator and the creation. Okay, friends, this first part is going to be pretty information heavy, setting up the stage, understanding these very complex building blocks of creation and the purpose of creation, and the purpose of spiritual practice and spiritual learning to purify what is coarse in us, which is our desire to receive, which separates us from the Creator, which we'll continue to understand and learn deeper. Have a wonderful night.